Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining Idaho Partners for Good today. I'm Connie Miller, and it's a pleasure to be the host today for such important topics. So I'm glad to be here. We know your time is valuable. It's why we have these workshops that are really packed full of really good practical information and resources for you to really help you stay ahead in leading your nonprofits. So as we get started, let me just do a real quick summary of a little about Idaho Partners for Good, the host for the Nonprofit Success Lab. So our mission is to reinvent how people like you and me give, share our expertise, and actually do greater good together. The vision is really to develop stronger, healthier, better equipped nonprofits so that they can do more of what they do best. We do that by educating our donors to give more for impact and providing our nonprofits for education. We know how important coaching is and mentoring and evaluation, accountability, and really just looking at capacity building expertise. So we have 3 core values. Those are continual learning, which we're going to do some wonderful stuff today, designing with end users, and then using our entrepreneurial mindsets. The experts that we are going to put in front of you are best in class. We have an amazing one today in Maureen, and our experts are just constantly learning themselves as well and retooling, innovating to kind of stay ahead of changing times. So it's one of the reasons that we record these, so those can access them in the future. So let's talk a little bit about today's workshop, which is going to be wonderful. Last year, we heard a lot of stories from both executive directors and board members about their level of anxiety and confusion in regards to leading their organizations. Certainly in that post-pandemic world that we had. So what are we going to do, right, in adjusting in our operating environments as they continually change? We know that donations are down in some areas, and board members are wondering how they can help. So you can learn a lot of these things from the Nonprofit Success Lab. So the lab is a place to learn and ask questions. We want you to do that today. Know that it's a supportive environment. We have a host of a lot of experts here to be resources for you. So we're here for you is the important part. So today you'll get to learn from Maureen O'Toole, who is actually in week 3 of a series that she's doing for us. And addressing the 3 work areas of the board. So this week's workshop is titled Developing Board Level Annual Plans and Goals. So we'll continue to explore those board activities within the 3 work areas. And today's learning objective is to really just help boards understand how to create a board annual plan with goals. By the way, Maureen has done 2 other workshops, and those are on our YouTube channel, which you can find on the Idaho Partners for Good website. So let me introduce our amazing presenter today. Maureen O'Toole's passion is helping people and organizations use their gifts, talents, their goals, and strategies to become the best version of themselves. I've had just the personal privilege of getting to work with Maureen side by side in some organizations, and she has definitely got incredible expertise and plus just a great human, Maureen. So Maureen has 30 years of servant leadership in military service, higher education, elementary education, and youth leadership, for-profit and not-for-profit organizations, and she moves easily between the business and the nonprofit sectors. She's a former Silver Sage Girl Scout Council CEO, current board member of the Sunrise Rotary Foundation, and she just does so much more. She has her hand in so much in nonprofit world and helping boards become more effective. So I'm going to turn it over to Maureen, and it's just a pleasure. And thank you, Maureen, for giving us some of your time today.
Oh, thank you, Connie. I really enjoy these sessions. So I see Liberty's back with us. Erica, I'm not sure I met you. I haven't met you yet, and I don't want to butcher your name, but the other person who logged on, which Rybarzik? Rybarzik?
Barczyk. It's Tanya. My husband and I share an account,
Okay.
so I took the first name off.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. And Erica said she isn't able to use her audio, so I'm going to do a lot of conversation. I'll bring a topic up and then ask people to weigh in and ask questions or give us their perspective. So Erica, make sure if you want to add something or have a question, put it in the chat so we don't want to miss what you have to say. So I'm actually today I'm going to be looking at, okay, so we have already talked about what the three work areas of the board and then how they're tied to your duty of care, obedience, and loyalty. And then last time I just carried that forward. So every week you're going to see me carry that forward. What are the three duties of the board? What are the three work areas of the board? And how can we focus on those and helping the boards understand what their roles are and then actually set goals for themselves. So as I go through the slide deck today, you're going to hear me asking you a lot of questions because there's a tremendous amount of expertise on this teleconference. So, let's see. Hold a second. I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute. Need a different participant view because I can't see this. Stop view. All right. Would somebody tell me
your slides, Maureen? When you had them up a minute ago, I could actually see them.
Yeah, the problem is I have the sidebar. The bar with the panel participants is up at the top, and it wouldn't let me see the slide deck. So I'm just wondering if somebody, for some reason, my brain just stopped. How do I go to the gallery and move just a different? I'm sure.
So if you just go,
You up at the top, there's the little 9 dots, looks like a telephone dial pad. And that'll give you a gallery options or speaker options.
Let me see if I can shut that down. I don't know. Golly, that's embarrassing.
do you see the 9 dots where it says view on the top right?
No, I don't have that. I think you guys have a different view than I do. So, well, I'll just bring it up and we'll figure it out because I don't want to waste anybody's time. There, I'll just go back to share screen. There. Okay. So I'm going to just go up here. We'll start here, and I'm going to leave that sidebar over there because I can't see the top of my screen to get rid of the sidebar. So on this first one, making board level plans and goals, I'm going to start with the Simon Sinek question of why. So why do you want your board to make board level goals, like an annual plan and goals for the year? Why do you want to do that?
Well, I think it keeps people safe. They keeps them focused on that you're all working together for the similar goal.
Yep. Keep people focused. What else? And then like safe. So before everybody hopped down, we were talking about a lot of board members spent a lot of time confused. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And what happens when people aren't sure what they're supposed to be doing? There's two things that happen.
They disengage.
Yeah, they disengage. What's the other one? If you're a board member and you're really passionate about this organization and you're not exactly sure what you're going to be doing, what's one tendency you might have?
Blossom says confusion, which is definitely true.
Yeah, you're going to get confusion. So Connie said people disengage or they underperform. You know, they're not sure what they do, so they sit quietly. The other one is you get the overreach. So I'm going to step in here and I know how to do this and I'm going to tell you guys how to do this. And you'll get a board member who reaches past the ED or the CEO and starts trying to tell people what to do because they see a problem. So last time we talked about what are the complementary roles of the board and the CEO. And if the board functions the way it should, the only person they work with and give feedback to on a regular basis is a CEO. Certainly through committees, they work with the staff, but their actions need to be directed through the CEO. So when you help them understand what their role is and then actually help them set goals and focus their efforts, you really get rid of those two issues you have, the underperformance role and then the overreach goal. And it really helps the board become a higher functioning board. Focus your efforts, and then at the psychological level, when we set goals, we achieve more. There's part of us that's driven by setting a goal, a number, a percentage, an activity. That's just the way we operate as human beings. So that is a big why. And it actually helps the staff too, because when board members focus and they get all that talent, they become real capacity builders for the organization. They focus their efforts and they lift the organization. So I always circle back to this. What is the purpose of a board? And the fiduciary responsibility, and I always highlight that first one, responsible for managing the organization's interest. So board members look at the whole organization objectively from a business perspective. It's an overview of the whole thing. And then out of those things, what you want them to do, out of those duties they have in their focus here, that managing the organization's interest, you want them to be very specific. What are we looking at now? Boards can't tackle all sorts of issues at the same time. You have to have them focus. What can we do right now? Or the acronym WIN, what's important now? What do we need to focus on now? What do we need to focus on this year? Fiduciary responsibility, and a really focused board that brings their talent to the forefront and serves on committees and does research for the organization lifts the whole organization professionally. Everybody gets better at their job when board members maximize their skill set. Everybody gets better. So when I talk about what are board level goals, what are the 3 work areas of the board, I always use this tool. So you're right there. You're right there in all these areas all the time. You're shaping the mission, the strategic direction. Are we doing what we said we were going to do? Has the mission changed? Are we making sure the organization has strong leadership that gets training, board members who get training? We're able to finance these activities. And the last one, are we monitoring improving performance? Are we constantly watching what was the strategic plan? Did we execute it? What is the annual plan? What did the budget say? Are we executing the budget? So you're looking at all of those things at the same time, which is a lot. It's a lot of stuff to be paying attention to. So what I try to do today is say, okay, out of those 3 big work areas, shape mission and strategic direction, leadership resources, and monitor performance, how can you focus your efforts? So that's what I'm working with today. How can I help you set board level goals? So this is what we talked about 2 weeks ago. And what are board members supposed to be doing? This is a big concept. Oh, shape the mission and strategic direction. Well, gosh, thanks for sharing. I feel much closer to you now. But what does that actually mean? What are activities I should be doing? So out of that, one of the board's biggest thing is always have the big picture, the mission of the organization. And do we have a vision for what success looks like? And do we adhere to our own values? So if I look at that, I'm going to start the conversation right away with that. If you're sitting on a board, or you're the staff for a nonprofit, look at that big concept. How could you turn that into a board goal? Adopt and regularly review the organization mission, vision, and value statements.
For us, we're trying to put in like an annual rhythm calendar. So giving like at each of these being addressed at a certain meeting or a time frame going into a certain meeting.
Perfect, Liberty. So if I was turned around, I could very simply take this duty, this activity, and say, in quarter 4, review the organizational missions for relevancy, right? And reevaluate our vision for success. And then adhere to or identify if we are operating in accordance with our own values. And it just becomes an activity that you say, okay, every 4th quarter, we come together as a board with the senior leaders of the organization and we say, is the mission statement still relevant? Does it need to change? Are we going to add new program? And is that new program, does it still align with the mission? So that just becomes a placeholder on your calendar. I always say, please have a board retreat once a year. And at your board retreat, look at the vision, the mission, and the value statements. So that second one, in conjunction with the organizational staff, participate in developing a strategic plan. Most organizations that I've worked with don't have a strategic plan. And it seems like a bridge too far. But a strategic plan is just looking at the organization holistically over time. A lot of people have an annual plan, but let's take that annual plan and just look at it over 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And there's tremendous power in that because it focuses the board and the staff over time and who we are and what we want to do. So how could you turn that second one? I just noticed it says A and A. I really can't stand auto reformatting, but and that second, how can you take that second one in conjunction with the staff, participate in developing and approving the strategic plan? So to me, this one is very much like the first one. Set a time on your calendar, the board calendar for the year, that once a year we go back to and look at the strategic plan and did we execute it and what's changed. So if I'm in year one of a 3-year plan, in the fourth quarter of year one, we step back. We look at what we said we were going to do and what we thought we were going to do in 2 and 3. And then you just adjust as necessary. But it pulls everybody back into, here's what we said we were going to do over 3 years or 4 years. We just pull everybody back in. In quarter 4, we're going to review the strategic plan for any needed modifications or changes. A very simple goal. Here's what we're going to do and here's when we're going to do it. Very simple. That last one, approve the strategic and annual plan. So I'm going to ask Connie on this one. Connie, with some of the organizations you work with, do they typically go back and look at the annual plan or the strategic plan on a regular basis, or?
What I typically see is they like to pull it out at strategic planning time, that once a year, but last year's. But what I've seen that's really effective is if every board meeting, they've got their strategic plan and their, people call them all kinds of things, initiatives, action steps, breakdown of goals, whatever. If they list them all, and then every board meeting, the staff update what's happened so far, any progress on them, then usually those organizations are much more successful at keeping it moving and making sure that they stay focused on it. The other thing that really happens if you can surface it in every board meeting, and there may not be a lot of updates on some of them, but just having them in front of board members reminds them what your key focus is, so that you don't bite off another huge project and then get distracted. And if you do, then you're looking at your plan and saying that one is more going to get us a lot more impact. What are we going to take off of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, don't exceed your capacity to do the work.
Yeah, dashboards are amazing.
Yeah, and actually, if anybody wants one, I can send you a template for a very simplistic strategic plan. So what I did with Girl Scouts was I actually turned the strategic plan into a one-pager, and once a month, the board got, here's the plan, here's status against it by activity. Once a month, they got it. So before the board meeting, they said, here's what you guys approved, here's exactly where we are against it. And it was just a very simple 1 year at a look, 1 year at a glance. That was very effective. This last one, Kimber, I think was kind of teasing me before everybody hopped on, but make sure that, once a year, the board looks at their bylaws and the policies required by the IRS. And the other one, that Idaho has over 180 statutes tied to nonprofits. Make sure board members once a year look at your bylaws. Are we abiding by our bylaws? Does anything need to change? We have the 2 policies we're required to hide by the IRS, and you probably also have a conflict of interest. Make sure you review that. And once again, if you could roll that into like one long day for a board retreat, Q4 or Q1, we review our bylaws, board policies, things like that. Just put it as a placeholder. Or like, I think I learned this best practice from Connie. Every board meeting, you have some time set aside for generative discussion, and you could take out one policy at every single meeting and look at it and review it and see if new members, do you have any question? Has it changed? Just put that as a placeholder.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I have found that that's incredibly valuable, because the other thing that I learned through that is, so we took all of our policies in several boards, but also even at the credit union where I had a board, and we broke them out over the course of a year. And then we just had every month we had a policy section. But what you'll be amazed about is how often your policies need revised. There's either a limit in there or a vendor mention or something where you have to actually update it. And so I think that that is important. Maureen, there's a couple really great comments in the chat.
Oh, okay.
One is Kimbra had some great advice, which is making it an update on the regular executive director report. Exactly what I said is if you can get the executive director to make sure they're updating every single month or quarter, depending on how often, it also reminds them of their role and making sure it helps them stay on track as well and not kind of get off target. So Blossom actually has a question, which is how long does it take to get your get your dashboards current? How long does it take you to keep those current for your meetings?
Oh, so when I put together simple strategic plans for organizations, as the executive director, and I've led 2 nonprofits, every Monday morning was a discipline for me. The staff would tell me where they were against the goals the board had approved. I would take all their input, and it would take me about an hour a week just to grab all that input, update the status of the strategic plan, and send it out. But I also sent it to the staff too. Every single person on the staff got it once a week, so everybody knew where we were against the plan. But that's not a big commitment. About an hour. Here's where we are.
Blossom has a wonderful best practice, and when you are updating your policies, so what I have found to be incredibly effective is we always had a cover sheet on the front of all policies, and they had the history of revisions. So they had the review date, and then if there was revisions, every single policy would always have this cover sheet. So whenever there was updates, you have a good tracking of the red line changes and then the new policy, and then you update your cover sheet. So we could go to any policy and see the last 6 revisions and the dates they were revised, and we could go back to the board packet and see exactly what was revised by keeping a red line version in there as well.
Perfect. Perfect. And it comes to I wrote down when we first started there, accountability, because what I'm going to get to next week is board level accountability by doing board's assessment. But everything we're talking about right now is board level accountability. Go back and policies, go back and look at the strategic plan, put a placeholder on your board meeting that we're going to do this time. That's all creating board level accountability. And that's important because board members are volunteers. They're busy people. They have all their lives and they're giving you their energy. Help them be organized.
Maureen, if I can make one more comment about policies and bylaws, and that is what I have found to be really helpful is if you can figure out which board member or board members, and the board chair needs to always carry this role, but also get one other board member that is excellent with compliance, legal, that loves the minute detail, and have them be basically I call them your culture police, your bylaw police, your policy police. Because before you make any motion, if you can have someone that they carry that hat of, let me just stop and think, are we allowed to do this? Does our policy allow, and does the bylaws allow us? And because so often you get so wrapped up into the change you're wanting to make, you don't stop and think about a motion that may actually be in violation of a policy or a bylaw.
Oh, very true. That's a great point. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the second big work area of the board, which is ensure leadership and resources. And this one has the most specific activities underneath it. So there's actually a lot more than what I'm presenting today, but I just picked ones that I thought would be relevant to most organizations over time. Like this is a repetitive activity you're going to engage in. The first one, serve as an ambassador for the organization, speaking on its behalf and representing it at events and functions. At first glance, that doesn't seem like an activity that you would tie to a goal, but you can. So when I look at that first one, serve as an ambassador for the organization, speaking on its behalf, representing it at events and functions, it becomes an activity. You make a commitment. The board members make a commitment. I will attend at least insert number here, 3 organizational events this year. I will attend at least one fundraiser. So that would be a goal that was, you might tie it to a specific activity. In Q3, I will participate in the gala. You can tie those to specific activities. And I put together a board commitment letter for a different organization. And it's over time, it took the 3 work areas and said, here's what what I know I'm going to do in these areas. And it's, everybody looked at it and said, during Q3, I will engage in the fundraiser, and everybody signed it for the year. So that one, you might be more creative. Anybody have a different idea, like how you could tie that first one, I'm willing to be an ambassador, into a goal statement? Oh, here's one. And we were talking about it earlier as people were joining us, promoting the organization through social media. You know, part of being an ambassador is like, I'm willing to make 1 post a month about the organization, something to that effect. And those are more individual levels, but they can be turned into board level goals. Every member will post at least 12 activities during this fiscal year, something like that. Serve on a board committee. Most boards have at least 2 committees. Your bylaws will typically tell you what the committees are. Here's the ones where standing committees versus ad hoc. I'm not going to have you turn that one into a goal. But the next one, ensure the organization has sufficient resources to sustain the mission, actualize the vision, and achieve annual and long-term goals. So that one is thinking more along the terms of actually having a budget, executing to budget, and fundraising. So how could you turn C into, if I stick just to budget, how could you turn C into a goal? And I'm going to tap Kimbra because she's got a strong financial background here, and she gave me a tool that's extraordinary. So how would you turn C into a goal?
Well, I think a lot of it is just keeping up to date with the staff. So making sure that you're present and listening when those things come forward, actively asking the executive director, if they're not bringing it forward, to share with you, what do you see as what's coming up on the horizon? And then, of course, checking spend against budget quarterly to make sure that, you know, there's no places that you're going over. If an organization is going way over budget or way under budget, it's a sign that we have the wrong number in there. So it's actively rechecking that budget quarterly for over and under, and readjusting as necessary.
So that could turn into quarterly all board review of budget to actuals and cash flow statement. And a lot of boards do that at every single meeting, but some only do it quarterly. But you turn it into an activity that they know is something they're going to do on a repetitive basis, on a periodic basis.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, I'll move down to the bottom one. Approve major expenses above the limit of authority of a paid staff. That one would be a little more difficult to insert into goal. That one ties itself better into a policy. So you have a policy that says the executive director or the CEO can't spend more than $5,000 without board approval. But I was on a board for a couple of years here where we had an issue where the other board members didn't know what the limit of authority was. So when we got to a board meeting and the CEO was saying we made a $10,000 commitment here and we made a $12,000 commitment over here, they didn't know what the limit of authority was. So we just kept saying yes. So based on my own experience there, that last one I would turn into a goal that was quarterly review the policy statement on limited authority of paid staff to execute funds or commit funds on behalf of the organization. I would turn that into, once again, like Connie said, every single meeting, maybe review a policy, but make sure that one gets plugged in somewhere that you're tracking it.
So Maureen, without skipping over to letter D, you know, I think
Okay.
letter D and the one that letter A can both be tied together, because I think as part
Okay.
of being ambassador, maybe it is having meetings with potential donors and explaining to them why you give and what your level of investment is, and inviting them to match that. Being active and presenting the funding plans when it comes forward and says, we're raising funds for this, being an ambassador for that and having those real conversations with potential donors in addition to their personal giving is a huge piece. And I think you can quantify how many meetings it will take. I mean, there's always a logic model. It says if it takes 10
Yes.
to get to say yes, then I agree to have, at least 20 conversations. So I can get my 2 or bring 2 donors to the table or whatever the commitment is.
So, Kimbra, what you're talking about is something I always refer to as established for the board a give or get policy. That
There
I
you go.
commit as an ambassador, I will attend X number of events. So that's just creating visibility and telling the story. But the other one is I will bring people who are donors to the organization, either as sponsors, direct giving, foundation giving, but make some kind of commitment that says over the course of this fiscal year, I will serve as an ambassador in these roles, or I will bring $10,000 to the organization, give or get, either through personal donations, sponsorships, introductions to granting organizations, something like that.
Yeah.
Best
Yeah,
make
I
that.
love give or get policies because they really provide the opportunity. We all have different time, talent, and treasure, and it really allows people to personalize what that is. But in the end, the accountability to the organization's goals are showcased there, and everyone can contribute at whatever level is most convenient and
Mhm.
use their gifts and talents.
Yep. And will say that for most boards, this the stepping into the funding role and setting goals there is the scariest part. So you have to figure out how to make it, really this, you can do this. You can I will invite at least 10 people to the next fundraiser. You just set some very specific goals.
Yeah, and Maureen, if I can make a comment on D
Mhm.
and just my experience in many boards that I've served on, and that is there's this fear of challenging the reality in a proposed budget. And pretty consistently, usually the line item is pretty solid when you get to expenses like salary expense and operations. But the line item that is always almost dreamy is donations and funding. And so I remember a board that I sat on where I joined a new board and they had a deficit budget and performance the prior 2 years, and they were presenting a flat budget, but the number in the funding source was so large compared to previous years. And so we really spent a lot of time in that meeting talking about the practical and the reality around can we achieve this and what are the plans. And there wasn't plans, but they created some amazing new plans to be able to achieve that goal. So what my comment is, as board members especially, and as staff, we have to help board members open the door to challenge something that doesn't look right or isn't real, because this board had passed a deficit budget 2 years in a row and we're using out of reserves. They had reserves.
Yep.
But if they went down that path, they were going to have no reserves the following year and had no board. Once we opened up the discussion, it was amazing, the livelihood. But this was at a motion. People had made a motion to approve this budget when I asked that question. And then it opened up this brilliant conversation. But I would just say we have to find a way to continue encouraging board members to provide input about, is this achievable and does this feel real, and give them permission basically to do that, because no board member wants to challenge the hard work of staff that really believe in here's our new plan.
So kind of leverage off that. So I just worked with a very small organization a couple weeks ago, and the senior leaders were not aware of what the budget was. There wasn't transparency with the CFO, with everybody else that was going on. So we actually established a goal for that organization that was using historical data. We will evaluate the proposed budget for viability and realistic reality in the third quarter. So before the next year starts, 1 quarter out, we're saying based on historical data, show me the last 3 years worth of budgets, and then budget to expense, and then cash flow statement. And it was just helping that small group go, okay, we need to be really transparent about money. And we need
That's
to have
brilliant.
real hard conversations about money. Show me 3 years worth of budgets and expenses and P&L. But it was a very simplistic goal. But I watched the entire senior leadership of this small company just go like that. Oh gosh, that's a great idea. Once a year before the next fiscal year, 3 months out, we all look at this together.
Very good.
Okay. Let's see. So on this one, oh, here we go. We're talking about money again. Just making sure that your everybody, all your stakeholders, your board, your committee members, your donors, your staff, the public, granting organizations are informed about the financial condition of the organization. So a very simple way to do this one is to publish your Form 990. Make a link on your website, publish your Form 990. So you usually don't get those well until the second quarter of the next year. But a simple goal there would be in Q2, publish the last year's tax statement on our website or provide a link somewhere on the website to create that level of transparency about our budget. What's another way that you could set a goal to create a level of transparency about the organization's finances? What's another way?
I'm a believer in having the CFO attend board meetings and be available for questions. Get board comfortable to say what's in this line item, how come this went up so much.
Yep. Yes. Yeah, I'm surprised sometimes when I work with a board and the CEO or executive director is the only senior staff member at the meeting. I'm surprised. So if you want to build trust and transparency with the board, I always recommend make sure the development director's in some of those conversations, the CFO is in some of those conversations. Another one that I've seen, I was on the Salt and Light Radio board for 2 years, and they did a really good job. Their annual report at the end of the year had basically a P&L, published it for all their donors. So I would get, here's all the great stories. Here's all the wonderful work we did. Oh, and by the way, here's our transparency about our budget. This is where our budget is. And I thought that was really helpful. I gave the president of the board a big shout out for that. That's a great idea. Because most people want to give to an organization that's financially viable. So just be transparent about your budget. So you could publish your Form 990 annually. You could put a P&L or some budget statement in your annual report. Those are 2 simple things you could do and just put it on your calendar. This one, ensure the organization has periodic audits conducted by an external organization. So my last role as the vice president for the youth apprenticeship program, we actually had that plugged in every single June. So it was the last quarter of our fiscal year. We hired an external auditor to do this. It was just plugged into our calendar for the year. Bring on an external auditor, and then the report would be published within that quarter. So that's just another goal you could set to create clarity about your budget, to make sure you're doing things in accordance with generally accepted principles. So I'll keep paying Liberty, but Tanya, does your organization do a periodic audit?
I'm on the consulting arm for
okay.
IP4G, so I'm here to learn from you guys.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just trying to what are some best practices out there? Because we've got a lot of talent on here. This one, the H, this is all talked about the care and keeping the CEO, and that the CEO is the only employee of the board, but hire, advise, support, reward, and if necessary, replace the organizational staff leader. That would be one you probably wouldn't turn into an annual goal. That would be an activity that just happens. It's one of your functions, but it just happens. You don't say, okay, every 3 years, we're going to replace the executive director. No. That's not going to happen that way. So I'm not going to turn that one into a goal. This one's really powerful. And the last one there, ensure adequate orientation and training of board members. How could you turn that into a goal?
You could easily have a goal that all new board members attend orientation, formal orientation but prior to their first board meeting.
Good. Good. So that becomes a placeholder for you. If you bring new board members on at the beginning of the fiscal year, and that's how most organizations say in the first quarter of the fiscal year, we'll onboard our new members, then you make sure you have a placeholder that says all new board members receive onboarding during the first quarter of the fiscal year. And just set that as a very simple goal.
The other thing about this, Maureen, really good best practice. I'm actually going to do a whole series later in the year on this for you all, but is how to make your board meetings interesting, and adding professional development to every single board meeting is a reason to attend, as well as just continued growth. And because all board members, to get all of this right before you show up at your first board meeting is pretty heavy. So it's a annual cycle of bringing great content, 10-minute guest speakers,
Right.
talk about these things into your board meetings, where board members won't want to miss your meetings. And I often hear we can't get board members to attend the meetings. You have to make them enlightening and fun and engaging.
Yes, absolutely. And board members are hesitant to put funding towards professional development, but that this is an organization, all organizations want to get better. So you need to be willing to put funding towards training the staff, training the board, doing onboarding. You have to fund that type of activity.
I would say this series is also an excellent resource that you can bring out and play snippets at your board meetings. If there's a topic that you particularly want to cover, you can find the presentation that best suits that and bring that forward too.
Yes. Yes.
Great idea.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on actually to monitor and improve performance. So I have circled, you heard me talk about this once already, but make sure you're operating in accordance with your bylaws and you're following relevant statutes, laws, and policies. So the state of Idaho just requires that you have board members and you also have an annual meeting. And that's actually 3 board members, have bylaws, have an annual meeting, and the IRS requires you to have 2 policies. But, you know, once a year, at some point, you step back and do an evaluation. You step back and you evaluate the whole board. And that's what I'm going to talk about next week. How do you do board level assessments and evaluations? But that one to me becomes a placeholder. As part of our operating activities once a year, we conduct a board level assessment, and decide which quarter you want to put that in, but make sure the board assesses itself annually. So I worked with the Bishop Kelly Board of Governance, and they actually have written in their bylaws that they will conduct an annual board self-assessment. I was very impressed. Make sure it's on your calendar and make sure you do it. And the second one ties to exactly what Connie and Kimber were just talking about. Make sure you provide them with training. Make sure your board gets professional development and training. Do they know how to read a financial statement? Do they know what a Form 990 is and why is it 100 pages long? And what goes in those pages? And what are the 3 or 4 most important pages? And do they understand how they step into fundraising and what a fundraising campaign is? Make sure your board gets that level of professional development and just put it in there somehow. Like you could dice it out over meetings. You could put it into a board retreat. You could do something, but make sure it's on your calendar that we conduct board professional development. The last one is tied to a lot of boards I work with want to approve the budget, and you definitely need to do that, but make sure you're approving the organization's annual goals too. If they don't have a strategic plan, do they have an annual plan that has goals in it? And make sure you review that. And when would you want to review next year's plan, you guys? When do you want to review that?
Before it starts.
Thank you. Before it starts. So give the staff time to if you're on the board and you're looking at it, you want to give them at least a month or 2 to redirect. If the board says, hey, you need to include this, or we don't understand that goal or something, give everybody enough time to redirect. So at least in the last quarter before the new year, the board reviews and approves and gives any additional guidance on the organizational goals.
Maureen, we have a couple of questions here.
Oh, great.
Blossom asks, how long and how often does a board meeting need to be to address all of these key activities?
So Connie has probably more best practices than me, but I was very fortunate at Girl Scouts to work directly with a woman who was actually a professor and taught board governance at the college level. And she put together a perfect board meeting for me, an agenda, and it was 60 minutes long. And that every single time we had 10 minutes at the end that were this generative conversation or some kind of training. So it was just plugged in for us every single board meeting. 10 minutes, we're going to do some kind of training or you're going to have a generative discussion. And it was really just 10 minutes. And it became a pattern and everybody was ready for it. Hey, we're going to talk about this today. And like Connie said, we'd bring in people who were experts at it. You know, hey, so-and-so from this accounting firm is going to talk to you. That one took longer. Here's the Form 990 training. But we just plugged it into every single calendar. Every single board meeting. What do you think, Connie?
Yeah, a minimum of 60 minutes. I'm a big proponent of a little bit longer, a couple hours. So what I have learned is board members that know each other and build relationships with each other are more engaged and accountable to each other. So I'm a big believer of finding some time where you basically get to know each other. One board that I served on, and actually we started this at Icon Credit Union, and I just saw our board elevate at a whole new level, is we had a 30-minute dinner. So we had an hour meeting, 30-minute, and then another half hour. So our
Oh.
meeting for 2 hours. And that dinner time allowed everyone to connect on a personal social level. And also it was amazing, the discussion about who do you know? What's your network? How can we build on some of the things that we're working on? So it was this very casual thing. And we just made sure that no business was being done there in regards to anything that needed to be shown up in the minutes. But then the other thing is, as Maureen just mentioned, we actually had on our agenda strategic thinking time, just like Maureen mentioned at the end. And it was an agenda item. So it was, what should we be talking about? What could take our organization down?
Mhm.
What are our biggest risks here? What are the things we should be celebrating that we're not celebrating? It was really strategic thinking, general time, and we always have professional development as well. And I'm a big believer of consent agendas, which is
Mhm.
mean take all your reports, but it is important that people are pointing out the major changes of the reports in the consent agenda, which usually staff are really great people to add to their general small report that they give about their area of expertise. But I have seen, if you can, what I wouldn't do is do a 2-hour meeting and not have it be highly productive and organized and efficient, because people won't come at all then. So it has to be engaging and fun and informative, and you don't want to miss it, because I have seen some people just throw even an hour meeting that is not productive. And if you're not going to miss a lot, your board members will miss the meeting.
Oh,
I look forward to your series on how to have
yes.
engaging board meetings. The second question, Maureen, is something you may be going to cover later today or in next week's topic, and that relates to bylaws. Specifically, if you have an organization that hasn't looked at their bylaws, we're talking an awful lot about it. What is the optimal way to edit, update, or rewrite your bylaws?
I always recommend you actually have the bylaws with you at every single meeting. And you have them open, not just have them at the meeting, have them open at the meeting, and then set aside time every year to go through them. Yeah, they may be 12 pages of legal jargon, but make sure you put aside the time every year to go through them. What does this section say? Does it make sense? And you got to put that time aside. And then, like Connie said,
I'm just going to reiterate that, and just we're already at that point where we've decided, wow, these are not applicable and they're not right. How do then we rewrite them?
so you can do that. They're actually a legal document between you and the IRS. So you might reach out and find a lot of law firms will do this as pro bono, or someone who's got a background in law, but have somebody who's got some expertise in this just come work with the board. You know, what
Yeah.
does this say? Why is it no longer relevant? How would it change? Like one that changes a lot is when an organization that hasn't looked in their bylaws is their means of communications and holding meetings. So a lot of them have changed now, and the verbiage has to change. It's we can conduct a meeting electronically as long as everybody can hear. It's not an in-person one. You've got to go look at that one. And then how do we vote? Can we do an electronic vote now? Can people vote? Can people vote through email? You have to address that one, because we've all learned to be in the virtual world. Your bylaws have to identify that, yes, you can vote this way, you can meet this way, you can have committee meetings that meet this way. Those things have to be addressed. But just, I
Yeah.
would just pull someone who has expertise in it to go through them with you and what could change and why.
Very good. Thank
Right.
you.
And Kimra, a couple of really other quick comments. One is, many times it actually says within your bylaws what you need to do to change that
change them.
section. And so some things your bylaws will actually speak to themselves, and as long as you follow that, then that's good. The other thing is, many organizations have another organization that has to kind of approve bylaw changes. So like a parent organization. So if you make a change in your bylaws, maybe you're part of a larger organization, a national versus local. or regulatory agencies. Sometimes some organizations are actually, maybe they're grant funded enough, or they have other, for example, even like Icon Credit Union, Department of Finance had to approve bylaw changes. So, but sometimes it's other more technical parent companies or whatever that need. So yeah, what Maureen said is right, is make sure that you at least understand what that means and who is in it, but usually it's written within the bylaws as well.
Good conversation. That's great conversation. I think that's going to benefit some other listeners as they come into this. Maureen, for the sake of time, I know we have about
Yeah.
5 minutes here,
Right.
so I want to give it back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So then I'm just going to do this quickly. I took some of the ones we talked about and I just turned them. If you were going to turn what we talked about into to make a board level look, here's where here's the activities we're going to do and goals in each one. And I turned it, I have this as a document that I will make sure I send to Blossom, but I turned it into a very simple document. In mission and strategic direction, there it is. Make sure you review this quarterly. When do you want to do it? The fourth quarter before the next year starts. If you're going to change goals, make sure you do that. They said, they don't have a strategic plan. They have an annual plan. They just have organizational goals. Make sure you look at it at the fourth quarter before the new year starts. So just turn those into simple goals that a board could track. And if I was Kimber, I'd turn it into a spreadsheet and they could just look at it every single meeting. Here's what we said we were going to do in Q4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did we do it? And then under ensure leadership and resources. Here's just 5 simple goals a board could have every single year. And when are you going to do it? And then the last category for monitor and improve performance. It's very simple. And I made sure to spread out the activities over an entire year. So not everything falls in Q4, not everything falls in Q1. So board members can truly focus when you get to a quarter. Here's what we're going to focus on this quarter. There's a whole year we're paying attention to, but this quarter we have to make sure we get these things done. Okay. So I'll just skip down to the conclusion because I know Connie's going to wrap it up for us. But the board members have 3 work areas, 3 large work areas. And when you do this level of stepping back and going, what are the activities in each area? And which one of those activities we're going to focus on next year, and then be even more specific. Exactly what are we going to do and when are we going to do it? Be that specific, and then just commit to doing it. Bring that board level plan, that annual plan, to your meeting and do that self-assessment right there at the meeting. Here's what we said we were going to do in Q1. Did we get it done? Are we doing it? That level of self-assessment, and hold yourselves accountable. So I'm wrapping it up. What are questions or?
Any questions for Maureen before I give a little summary here? All right. So first of all, just thank you for attending. And the Nonprofit Success Lab is actually brought to you by Idaho Partners for Good, as we mentioned, and it's the social enterprise, which is Thrive Together Consulting. So if you want a list of consultants that can help your organization accomplish many of the things that we talked today, the website, Idaho Partners for Good website, actually lists the consulting partners. So Thrive Together provides 3 primary buckets of consulting services, which is, we've talked about operations, leadership, and strategy. And the Thrive Together consulting services are designed really with your team in mind to enhance efficiency and streamline your processes and all these important things that we should be focusing on. So just want to thank Maureen for this. Definitely tune in next part of her part 4 of this weekly series, which is March 14th. And it'll be focusing on evaluating how good your board is and how to hold them accountable. So in the end, it's how do we enhance, right, what we're trying to do. So if you found this valuable, definitely share with your friends and spread the word and invite other leaders. We should have a whole lot of leaders on these wonderful series. So make sure that you are inviting them, and make sure to sign up. Let your folks know, also your friends, sign up on the Idaho Partners for Good website to be able to attend. So just want to thank you all and appreciate you attending. And the recording will be available. The resources will be available after as well. Any final questions or comments? All right. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Connie.
Have a great day. Thanks,
Okay.
Maureen.
All right, see you guys next week.